Hello everyone, it's Pastor Dave here with your Thursday Thoughts segment where we say goodbye to the gospel of the week before and say hello to the one coming up ahead. Now, last week we were in Mark 1, verse 29 through 39, and we talked about some of Jesus' miracles, not in the abstract for their own sake, but what they did in setting the community in motion and what they showed about God's grace being in motion ever outward. And one of the things that we touched on in the sermon was how much we want to own and or contain God. And really, those are the same things. You can't own something without claiming it and containing it. If anybody can get it, it's not really yours by the rights of ownership, right? When we do this to property, it's one thing, still kind of sketchy because that land probably belonged to someone else. When we do it with God, it's the same as trying to own the whole universe. It ain't gonna work. And I think all of us would admit that intellectually. But you need to look at our processes and systems and biases and see just how set up they are in the church for ownership. You're not going to like what you find. It's actually a little icky. We can start with the personal. Look, there are 100 ways in which we try to own the process of worship. Everything from when it is, to where it is, to who's really accepted and who's really not, to the style of music we use. How many times have you heard or said, well, I don't really like that music? We all have preferences. That's fantastic. I'm glad you can express it. At the same time, saying God only comes through certain kinds of music, and by the way, that kind of music is exactly the kind that I like, is claiming ownership, trying to contain God and shove God down into a certain style that's grown up with or is in our culture or is in our personal preference or whatever it is. Not bad that we have them. Not okay to say God only works like I think God works. That's shutting down God, and that's also denying God to people who might like another type of music. Look at the ways that we usually design programs and the people that we ask to run them. I cannot tell you the number of times we've come up with an issue to be solved or some creative juice is needed somewhere. And we say, how do we do this? And inevitably, the first two answers are, well, we used to do it this way 30 years ago, and I know the three people who are good at this, and they're magically the three people that we ask to do every other thing in the church too, because that's who we're comfortable being in charge, and that's who we want making the decisions. Not necessarily that we're denying their talents, they probably have them. But you know what? The same three people are gonna design things the same three ways. And that's secretly what we want when we do that. We don't really want the problem to change. We really don't want the system to change. Instead, we want to say we're doing something, but we want to do it in the way that's most comfortable and usual to us, the way that we have always done it, the way that doesn't create any disruption. This may be a very human instinct, but it is also a way to try to own God. God only works like we say God does. God only works in the way God always has here. God only works through the people that we say God works through. We say all the time, everybody's welcome in church. Come on in. But as soon as they try to do something revolutionary or new, whether it's small or whether it's big, we say, you're welcome, but not like that. Instead, you have to conform to what we think is right here. Again, ownership of God, denial of God to other people, especially people who are different. Let me tell you one last little secret. The ELCA, our parent church, a national church, I may get in trouble for saying this. I will admit I have not studied it as well as I should. That said, they just came out with a statement about the future of the church. And in this grand future church, they said this: We need more young people, as if we were in charge of bringing in young people and young people were objects. We need more people of color, which absolutely we do, but the same flaw in that reasoning. Also, we need to draw from and respect the tradition. You don't have to go very far to see where one of those is going to oppose the other two. And I have a challenge, I have a thought. You know what? I happen to think that more young people and more people of color participating and leading is exactly what we need. So here's my thought. Let's vacate every bishop who's serving right now and instead replace them with young people and people of color. The ones who already qualify, by the way, can stay. But everybody else goes, young people, people of color, in charge of this church right now. Guess what? They're going to say no. Because why? Well, because we have our processes and because we have our systems. And you know what? We'll say we need this, but we won't actually do anything about it. Because who owns God? It's not the people that we're trying to attract. It's us. And you can come in as long as your ownership stake doesn't dislodge our 51% or whatever we think we need to be comfortable. This is backwards, this is wrong, this is exactly how we conduct our church. On a large level, on a congregational level, and in our hearts and minds. That's what this gospel is meant to break. From the synagogue to the home to the town to other towns. It doesn't invalidate our hearts or our churches. Instead, it puts them in context. Not at the center, but serving and following God wherever God may go, which is everywhere with everyone. That's my Thursday thought for the day. You can see us on Sunday. We are going to move to Mark chapter 9 and talk about the Transfiguration. We will see you then.